Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm now here to ask your confirmation of my appointment of our aviation director, Dan Gallagher. I believe 5 of you did have a chance to meet with Dan, I think, last week, as I understood. And so you know quite a bit about Dan. I just want to suggest a few things about him that to me are very special. First of all, he has a long history of airport experience. He's been around the airport life beginning at 14 years of age. That doesn't tell me whether he was there legal or illegally. I assume. You never climbed over the fence, did you, Dan? Well, anyway, he has a master's in business administration, a bachelor's of science, both in aviation. He's been infinitely successful, in our opinion, as the interim aviation director over almost the last year. He decreased airline costs by 40%. That's important to get their landing fees down so we can get fares down. He succeeded in bringing in a new carrier, Alaska Airlines, with a direct flight to Seattle. He had a lot of help from a lot of people, including the previous airport director, Mark Earl, who launched that dialogue, and Dan Gallagher was able to close the deal. Dan is now convinced a Legionnaire to begin service directly to Phoenix, I believe on the middle of May, $49 one way. That's my kind of airfare. Dan and his team will continue to build more relationships and help the Colorado Springs Airport grow. I think it's fair to say, and I believe you have a letter, that he is unanimously, wholeheartedly supported in this appointment and your confirmation by the Airport Advisory Commission, which reports to you, by the Air Service Task Force led by Bill Hibble of Elpamar, and by the West Side Fixed Base Operators. I would just say in closing that what really caught my eye about Dan Gallagher, honestly, is how humble he is. How he just has such a unique way of looking at things and getting other people to have an open mind, especially the air carriers who were moving away from us. Thought our economy was too volatile, that we're too close to DIA, and he was able to produce data that convinced at least Alaska Airlines and Allegiant to take a second look. He's just the kind of person we need in government, who is not only a superb executive and a motivator, but an innovator. Somebody who leads reinvention and thinks outside the box. Why are we doing things the same way? We have a vendor at the airport on our parking. When you check out there, all those people that take your money. And Dan learned quickly that we were still paying that vendor the same, I believe the same number of FTEs as when we were at the height of the boarding car springs. He could have just not paid a lot of attention. That's just one example where Dan dug in and continues to dig in to find every efficiency at the same time maintaining and improving quality. So just very delighted to be able to appoint Dan Gallagher. Would ask Dan to step forward, maybe make a comment to you.
Welcome, Dan.
Good afternoon, President King, President Pro Tem Bennett, and members of council. Just thank you for the opportunity to stand for here for a confirmation for a Director of Aviation. I know it's a tough act to follow with Wynetta. I'm very, very appreciative of Wynetta and the Urban Renewal Board with the athletes. I am not athletic at all. The airport softball team could attest to that. But again, I'm just really potentially serving in a much longer permanent capacity as the aviation director. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Bennett.
Well, I would like make a couple of comments. You know, I'm going to make a motion to approve Dan, who is my neighbor, and he lives several altitudes above me, but I've rarely seen a confirmation potential where the people who relate to him, not the employees, but the business people that relate to him have come out in force in his support, because he's not only working closely with them, but they recognize that his strong efforts has made not only the airport stronger, but it's made them stronger as well. And I think that's what your job is, and I deeply appreciate it. With that in mind, I move to approve a resolution confirming Dan Gallagher as the mayor's appointment for Director of Aviation.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any comments from the council at this time that you'd like to make, or Councilmember Martin?
Dan, I just want to say we're lucky to have you, and I think you are well aware, with the mayor standing next to you, particularly the importance we're placing on the airport right now. We're looking for some results. I think the whole community wants to see you succeed, so we're counting on you, Dan, and it'll be my pleasure to vote to have you become the new airport director.
Any other comments? Is there anybody in the audience who would like to come forward and speak for Douglas Bruce?
Well, this is appointment day, apparently. I was waiting to hear from Mr. Bennett what the salary was. If he was going to fill in the blank, I couldn't find any public information about what gargantuan salary he was going to be getting. I'm assuming it's mid six figures, but I really think that the public is entitled to know. When the public learned what you're planning to give to Jerry Forte, they stormed your offices and email boxes with objections, and that was defeated. So maybe this is the new plan, is not tell people the salary that you're planning to pay people. I'm concerned, I'm sure it won't make any difference in terms of your vote, but I'm concerned about a couple of things. First, I was sitting here when Mr. Gallagher spoke last year and said this memorable phrase, "We have to borrow $10 million to balance our accounts." That is so preposterous a statement. It shows that somebody doesn't understand that you don't balance your books by borrowing money. And then I read in the paper that he had announced, as the director of aviation, a rule about marijuana at the airport, and announced what the criminal penalty would be for that. Without the council, once again, you're letting the administration take over the legislative role as well as the appropriation role, Mr. President. And he announced a rule, an ordinance in effect, and the penalty for violating that ordinance as a bureaucrat. He doesn't have that power. I'm sorry, he doesn't understand criminal law any better than he understands constitutional law any better than he does financial rules and regulations. And I lastly just want to bring to your recollection, I saw nothing. Maybe he said something to the mayor privately. I don't know, but I doubt it. But George Culpepper was the sacrificial lamb because of his talking to people at the airport and to airlines, and he paid with his professional life for something that happened at the airport. Seems to me, Mr. Culpepper, it would have been improper for him to stand up for somebody trying to get information about the airport when he was the airport director. So I just bring those things to your attention.
Councilmember Bennett.
Well, I would like to bring to Mr. Bruce's attention that I thought you were very familiar with the charter, but obviously you might have missed this, that the city council has a responsibility for establishing the salary for the city attorney. It is not the city council's responsibility for establishing the salary for the other executives within the city. It is the mayor's. So, and as it relates to the bonding, my memory of that it did come to city council, and I do believe that it was a refinancing, which significantly saved us significantly over $1 million. And I appreciate you doing that good financial evaluation to bring that solution to us. Thank you.
If I could comment, the airport does not consume taxpayer dollars. I would think Mr. Bruce would know that. It's self-funding. It does not use Colorado Springs taxpayer or El Paso County taxpayer dollars. That's point one. Point two is the salary that I'm going to determine for him will be within the approved bandwidth for that position, which you all approved. And thirdly, as to the rule at the airport, I think some of you know this. When that all happened, I think it was early December, or excuse me, early January, when DIA said they were going to ban marijuana, and we started getting calls from media. And wanting to know what we're going to do. And I believe I shared with you, Mr. President, I got a communication from Attorney General John Suthers as a courtesy, telling me he'd been contacted by the Department of Justice and the Drug Enforcement Agency, and I knew from Dan Gallagher he was being contacted by the TSA and the FAA as to what we were going to do at the airport about marijuana. I recall a meeting, or several meetings, I think, between Dan and the police chief and the city attorney, interim city attorney at that time, talk about what to do. I do remember hearing something about pretty aggressive fines and imprisonment there. I think what's important is that we heard your voices. I'm up above my pay rate here, but I believe the airport policies are separate and apart from the city because of the interaction with the federal government. But nonetheless, I'm pretty sure we complied with what council wanted to do citywide in respect of your wishes. So, I guess we could counter more, but we're not taking taxpayer dollars here. At least in this case, we're spending money that's actually generated by revenue at the airport.
Okay, anybody else like to testify? Councilmember Snyder, then we'll come back to audience one final time. Go ahead, Councilmember
Yeah,
Snyder.
just a closing note for Dan. Dan, I'm certainly glad that you chose to really make Colorado Springs your home by pursuing this position. I couldn't be happier. I've always been impressed with how quickly that you respond whenever I've emailed or called your office, and people talk about the changes at the airport and how they really like what's going on. So I know you're modest, but people are still talking about you, but it's good. So.
Anybody else want to testify? Councilmember Collins.
I'd like the public to know that several council members did interview Dan, and he has a great contingent of fans out at the airport, and they absolutely love working with him. And I want to put out a statement about city salaries. When it said that council approves something, it means that the majority of council approves something. And when we did city salaries, I did not vote for the increases on the bandwidth. So I wanted the folks to know that. I want to take the personality out of my vote, but again, it's not about Dan, it's about the salary, so I'll be voting no.
Okay, anybody else who wants to testify? Dan, I'd just like to say I was at your house this morning at 6:45, dropping my wife off to go to Omaha, and flying out of Colorado Springs, and we got there and the line by United was clear from the front of the counter all the way kind of almost to the back door, and she says, "Oh my goodness, I can't believe all these people are going to Denver." And she got in and she called me back and she says, "They're all going on Alaska Airlines, must be going to Portland at that time of morning." I don't know for sure what time they were going.
It's actually going to Seattle. And it's unbelievable the load factors that we're seeing right now. So we may see some additional service coming up.
So that was encouraging to see all those people there this morning taking off. And I would just say with the work that I've done on the commercial aeronautical zone that we've been working on, I've been privileged to work with a lot of the people on the west side of the airport. And I think there's a lot of tremendous support for your leadership on the airport. And I know there's some things we can always do a little bit better, but I think one of the things we can do better is create a commercial zone there that enhances business and opportunity for business to flourish here in Colorado Springs. And so hopefully, as we go forward with that initiative, that will be successful and we'll make the airport much better than what it is currently, and I will be supporting your nomination today, so thank you. Any other comments? Okay, let's open the machine and vote. That passes on a 6-2 vote. Congratulations, Dan. Welcome.